I did it! I graduated college! I got my degree! Hooray! Wow, that's so cool! What are you gonna do with it? Hello? Hello? Hey, are you okay? I have mentioned in the past that I have had an unconventional schooling record through mostly no fault of my own. I have been to a total of 7 different public schools. In all but 3 of the schools, I spent no longer than a year in them. College, however, is different. You don't have to rely on where your parents decide to drag you. You can live on campus or rent your own place with the job using your adult money. You're an adult and goddamn it, am I not going to be jumping schools like a maniac again, because I did that once and I will not do it again. And yet I ended up going to 3 separate schools on the path of getting my degrees. 1 Associates in Game Design and Simulation and a BFA in Animation with a minor in Cinematic Arts. I just snapped my fingers there. I did that. A lot of young artists look at the newly graduated animator online and go, wow, I want to go to art school. But am I good enough? And is it worth it? Considering we're in the middle of an on-fire garbage can. And that is why I am here to tell you, young viewer, because I have a thing to admit. I did not graduate from an art school. Whoa, hey, relax, chill, get back over here, sit down. You don't have to click off the video yet. Let me just talk, because I have things to say. Yes, I didn't graduate from an art school, but I did go to one for 1 semester. Am I just gonna clap for myself? Okay. Anyway, I'm not going to be talking complete bullshit in this video, so why don't you take a seat and let me bring you onto this magical journey to answer the one burning question that matters to every single young artist. Is art school worth it? But first, the art for today's video. It's art fight time! I've been participating every year since I first joined this event 9 years ago. This year, it's no different. I revenge everyone who attacks me, and I do attacks on my friends and any cool OCs I see, and it could even be one of yours! If you want to find me on Artfight, I will have my profile link down below. I am on Team Fossil, so you guys are on Team Crystal, better watch out because I am coming for your asses. Now that that's out of the way, let's get back to the video. When I was a freshman in high school, my first high school was getting a lot of visits from colleges across the country, and because I was in an art class, I in particular was seeing presentations from art schools, trying to get us to go to their fancy school. One school in particular stood out to me, doubly so because they also ended up coming over to the high school I graduated from after I transferred there from my previous high school halfway through the school year. Basically, I just saw their presentation twice. This school was SCAD, and I didn't know what it was about it that made me want to go there compared to like the conveniently close Cermica or the well more known art school, I guess, like CalArts. But I wanted to go to SCAD so badly, so when I was a senior in high school, I ended up applying and I got accepted. But I did not go to SCAD that year. And that issue was specifically because of money. I didn't have a job through high school, no driver's license or a car, and getting help for most of those things was, to put it nicely, very hands-off. So a bit of reality came down hard. I was in no place to go to SCAD that year. And I know I make it sound miserable, because at the time I was very upset, but it ended up being a bit of a blessing in disguise. My school did require us to apply to a local community college for some reason, and I had gotten accepted into it. I'm not going to get the name of the school for privacy reasons, because unlike the universities I went to, my community college is like down the road from me, so we're going to call it Joseph School. Now you may be asking, if you haven't seen my videos before, why Joseph School? Well, I made a short about it some time ago, but there was a very religious guy at that school who looked like a young Joseph Seed from Far Cry 5, who hung out at the same spot in the cafeteria at the school at the time. And one time he saw art of Eddie from Fallout New Vegas and Kissing Woman that I had in my sketchbook and said, "God's light shone through my art," and it has never left my head since. God loves Eddie, New Vegas, and lesbians. You heard it from this guy first, not from me. I was not the one that said this. This was this guy. And he's very religious, so if God said so, then, you know, God loves Eddie and lesbians. But community college is also way cheaper than SCAD's prices, which are, at the time of, like, me being a community college, were still cheaper than they are now. And it was also a start. I knew I could try again to go to SCAD once I got my associates, and then get my life on track towards an animation degree. And here's the thing too, you have to take prereq classes like math and history and English and whatever, and if that had nothing to do with your major and you hated those subjects, chances are, depending on your major, you had to take less of those than you would have if you were like a mathematician or whatever. But here's the other thing though about Joseph School, they did not have a degree for animation, but they did have one for game design. Which to me is so bizarre because the school is in the county the extra college level classes program I was in is at. This was a program that offered both animation and cybersecurity courses, but no game design ones. And I'm assuming it's because it was specifically aligned with some of the classes Joseph School taught. And because I took 2 years of animation at this other school, I was able to skip the animation course at Joseph School, which I only ended up doing because I heard that the Joseph School's animation class, the only actual animation class in that school with like one professor, was awful, and I'd be better spending my time and money taking the rest of the courses my degree required. I don't know how it is now because it's been like years and years and years since I graduated from the school. For all I know, they could have gotten a new professor, but when I was going there, that was the case. So that was what I did. Community college is not so different from university, except there are no dorms and housing things to worry about. I don't know how that works for international students, but since I live close enough to get there via walking and bus, I never actually looked into it. Joseph School was also pretty big for a community college. Like, not as big as university, but still a bit of a hike to get to my classes. I do have some funny stories for school, and thinking back at it, a lot happened while I was at Joseph School, but some of them either like hit a bit too close to home or a bit too personal for me to share here, so I'm just gonna keep that to myself. The ones I can share are not too crazy, but some funny stuff did happen. Like for starters, I had to take a math and English placement test when applying, and I scored so badly on the math one, it was recommended for me to take 3, maybe 4 classes of math before taking a college level class. The math class I was placed in on my first semester of Joseph School was a self-taught class. We spent the class period doing self-paced modules that the professor just oversaw through the period. Didn't really do anything, didn't do teaching, just like watched us. I think she did go around and help out though, so it's not like she just like kept us to our own devices. She was also really funny. She really wanted us to call her doctor because she was like, I worked for my degree, call me doctor, not professor. Our only objective for this class was laid out very clearly. We just had to complete 3 of the 6 modules by the end of the semester, and we passed the class. Then we'll take 2 more classes if we complete those modules. But if you did all 6 modules and passed them, you only needed to take 1 more math class in order to take a college level math course, which I only needed 1 of those to get my math requirement for my degree. So I locked in and managed to get all 6 modules done so early that they gave me a packet with lessons for my next class, the next semester in it, and let me mess with that for a week. Then my professor afterwards, like just after that 1 week, approached me and she was like, Daryl, if you decide to ditch class for the rest of the semester, you'll still get an A as a final grade. Needless to say, I spent that time on other classwork outside of math. Also, a bit of advice for people like me who hate math but need at least 1 college level math course to graduate, take statistics. I asked the professor I got the next semester when registration opened up for my 3rd semester which math I would actually use in real life, and it was his recommendation. And he was right. It was also easier for me than like some of the other options they offered, like calculus. So of all the other options they offered, I do recommend it. Trigonometry to me is like hieroglyphics, and I do like algebra, but my brief time in business calculus made me feel like I was in kindergarten learning what 2 + 2 equaled again. I did not like it was not fun. I also met a lot of my current real-life friends there. You may remember Red, who has voiced in multiple videos I've done for school. He's great. I want to give him a shout out because he always does great work and he deserves the recognition for that work. He also did some voice acting for some videos I did during my years at Joseph School, and those videos are so old. Funny enough, one of the older ones, the life and death video, that was filmed in the woods where my dead body story is in. So if you want a little bit of lore about that, there's that. I also animated like crazy this year and made tons of animation memes that I enjoyed making until the wrong crowd found them and left such a hate mods in my comments, and I am going to go into the screen. This school is one of the things responsible for getting me a cinematic arts minor. I'll talk about that later, but my classes for game design require me to take a lot of film classes. I had a huge diverse range of classes for art, the typical drawing classes every art major has to take, and classes that teach you how to use Adobe programs like Premiere Pro, After Effects, and Illustrator, and game classes that taught me how to use Unreal and Unity. I already had Unity experience before this because I made a game in high school, but I got to make a 2D game around this time, so that was fun. But I also had to take coding classes, which were... Listen, I love video games, and I said I made a video game with classmates before these classes, but I will never ever be a programmer. I just don't like the code, it's not fun for me. I also took a portfolio class for my game design degree and was encouraged to focus on an animation portfolio because I am an animator, not a programmer, which is so funny, but it worked out for me. You think you would want me to make a portfolio to tell everybody about how much of a gamer I am? My work was in one of those college galleries for like half a semester, and it was so cool to see. The first time I had my art in a gallery. Fun fact, last year I was asked to submit art for a student alumni gallery in that exact school, and that was where this icon and veil piece was for. And that was my time in community college. Like I said, I think it's a great starting point for affordable mandatory educational requirements, and once you figure out what classes can transfer, I haven't had difficulty transferring credits, and so hopefully you will too, and it'll be fine if you decide to go this route. It's also cheaper because you're only paying for you're paying discounted 2 years for classes you don't want to take versus paying so much money for classes you don't want to take. I ended up taking a break between community college and university to save money, but also because I didn't have my driver's license and wanted to work towards that. And by the end of 2019, I was on my way there. I had a job with decent hours, the classes under my belt, and once I took my driving exam in March, then I should be ready for college in the fall of 2020. But then something really silly happened. A fun, silly little event that some people may have not been aware of. It was very low-key. Nobody was really talking about it. And fun fact, my driver's test was literally the week my state decided to go on lockdown. I got the email that my test was canceled a couple days before I was supposed to take it, and I was so mad. Why? I get why they did it. They had to do it, and I understand, but it was so painful. And because I was an essential worker and unable to go out and do things, and I had no car to pay for, I was able to work and save all my money. So after the summer of cicadas and plague, eventually I got the license in the car, and I went to send my application to go to SCAD, and I was accepted in the early spring of 2022. I changed my job at this time because my last one was killing me at that point, and by that fall I was ready to go. I packed all my things, and I took off to my dad's place where he and my stepmom came to help me move into my dorm. So the thing about SCAD is that it's spread across the city of Savannah in the most uncomfortable way. I think I could spend a while talking about the weird gentrification school does to the city, but that would take a while, and I think would be really weird coming out from somebody who isn't actually from Savannah. I just lived there for a couple months. I don't know, what do you guys think? It was hard for me to explain when I got back to my town, and one of my friends thought I was making a big deal about it because we also live in a gentrified city. It wasn't until we both went down there together that he'd go, "Oh, now I understand." I moved into a dorm that was the edge of the city where most of the animation classes were. It was called Monty House. The newest thing with moving into a dorm was 2 experiences I've never had before: living away from my family and living with roommates. My roommates were awesome, by the way. I know some people have college horror stories with bad dorm mates. Mine were not that. They were great, and we did a lot of great stuff together with other friends of ours, we checked out places around Savannah, and we got to see what the city had to offer since none of us was actually from the area. I also did other stuff with people in my dorm, going to Halloween parties, playing video games, and we just hung out with each other. I would host affinity trained watch parties in one of the big rooms our building had for things like that, and we got through 3 seasons of the show the whole time I was there. Please go watch Affinity Train. It is the most critically underrated show out there. I will scream the show's praises to the heavens all the time. One of the people living at the dorm also had a service dog who everybody in the building absolutely loved. She was a sweet girl, and on her days off, her owner would let us pet her and say hi. And her birthday was also around the time I was at the school, and he threw her a birthday party, and of course I went to it. I was not skipping out on a dog birthday party. It was a great experience, and there are days where I really miss it. SCAD only lets you really take 3 classes at a time, sometimes 4, which was different for me because I'm used to the 5 classes a semester setup, but each class was 2.5 hours long. They were also 4 credits each, so you were getting technically the full 15 credit requirement met. That honestly wasn't so bad. I've taken classes that last 4 hours, and some studio classes can be up to 6 hours long, but if you never took classes this long before, it would probably be completely new to you. I had a good schedule too. I had 1 early morning class, but all my classes were condensed in a small location, and the ones I had on the same day had a decent enough break between them that I could go back to my dorm, eat a meal, relax, then catch the bus and make it to my next class. These 2 classes were also within walking distance from each other, and my 3rd class was in the building across from my dorm. I could leave my dorm 5 minutes before class and be in my seat before the class starts. I love my classes. This one 3D animation project I did with a clip from Shaun of the Dead was for my Pathways Through Animation class, and I'm still in touch with my drawing professor, who still to this day is one of my absolute favorite professors I've ever had. She's great, and I love her. She was the kind of professor that I worked with who takes this subject seriously and your ability to do the work seriously, but still makes the class fun. We did a whole day where we went into the city and did architecture studies and perspective studies, and around Halloween we did a game where the prize was a big rubber rat. I still have him. He sits with my other rubber rats that I have collected, along with my Furbies and Mesmer. My art history professor at the school also talked a lot of crap about the British Museum, and for my final project, I did mine on it, not because I like the British Museum, but because I just wanted to talk about Robert's smirk. Magnus Archive still had me in a chokehold at the time, and I wanted to be very self-indulgent. I also enjoyed the experience of just being in Savannah. Savannah is an old city next to a river, and there's just always so much stuff going on. I love being around people like me, and I love the older architecture of the city. It is such a pretty place and so different from where I live, although my area does have its own cool historical places as well, even when it's not a gentrified mess. Like, there's a abandoned town near where I live that I recently went to go take photos for a photography assignment that I had at my last semester at school, so that was really fun. I got to take some cool pictures of an abandoned Catholic church from the 1800s. Woo! I was also going to SCAD when I made the decision that 2023 was going to be the year I launched in Harmony. I was at a point in working on the story that I realized if I don't finally do something with the thing, it was never going to be made. And I wrote the 3 original, sadly now deleted scripts for what eventually became the versions of Chapter 1 and 2 that are now out for everybody to read. Unfortunately, art school is so expensive, and I realized the hard way that I am not adept with dealing the financial cost of that. I ended up making the hard decision to go to a more affordable university closer to home. My parents were supportive of me, but I was still devastated with the decision. I thought I made the right decision at the time, and I still do, but this was my dream school, and I wish it worked out differently. I did my research beforehand, trying to find a place closer to home and less expensive that would let me get the degree that I want, but not at the cost of being in a hell of a lot of debt. Considering how the state of 2025, I'm really glad I made this decision. The closest art school to me was MICA, but the cost of a year at MICA, even in a state that I was living in, was about how much I was paying for SCAD. So I looked at the other schools in the area, and even in the schools that friends of mine went to, before I finally picked one. And I ended up going to UMBC, a STEM school that was just outside Baltimore and affordable enough that I could do my last 2 years of schooling without the financial burden that would have come to spending those years at SCAD. My first semester was rough, mostly emotionally, but because I had transferred so close to the start of the next semester, I was not able to take a full set of classes that were required just for my degree. Only maybe like 3 of them were. The other 2 were just classes I took to get the credit requirement. I didn't really need to worry about that, to be honest. My school accepted most of my credits, so I was able to meet the credit requirement semesters before my final one, but I needed a full set of classes for my financial aid to actually go through. The 3 classes I ended up picking for that credit fodder were Critical Sexuality, Entrepreneurship History, and 1965 The President Film History, which ended up notifying my advisor later that I was eligible for a cinematic arts minor if I just took one more class before I graduated, which I did. I have a queer horror webcomic called In Harmony, which started from the idea of how capitalism kills the arts, via a story about art students looking for monsters in the Appalachian woods. And like I said earlier, I wanted to launch the comic sometime that year, and if I had to take filler classes, then I was going to take ones that I could use the knowledge of to work on for my writing. Fun fact, one of the classes I wanted to take was a poetry writing class, since I had decided that Pacific wrote poetry at that point, but I didn't get in it. I think I didn't have the requirements to take that class, but there could have been more mediocre Daryl poetry out there than there currently is, so more on that, I guess. And I'm glad I went to UMBC. I met a lot of great people there, and what's more, had the chance to expand what I did with animation at the time to move to new mediums. I did animation through coding, more 3D work, and a ton of stop motion animation. And because of my film background, I was told that by taking one more film class on top of the other ones I already had taken, I was eligible to get a cinematic arts minor. So I did just that. I also had some amazing professors who were just characters of their own. One of my professors was funny. She called all of my, she called her classmate, her students, she called them pups and said raise your paws instead of hands, and snuck her dog out to our class for the last day of school for us to meet her. She also barked at me once. She was funny in a fun way. One of my other professors, she was also very silly and she was newer to the school than I was, but she made these really funny short animated films in her spare time, and she was also like really great with just like helping people find resources for animations. I adore her. She's like my top favorite professor from the school. I love her so much. And I had a third professor who took us to Micah's animation festival, Sweaty Eyeballs, where we went to an after party with beer and hung out in a very old building with our classes. Well, this like animated map we made for our project was played on the screen to see. We were like using like fluid animation, and so I animated my part in sand with a backlight, and it came out really cool. This one was also really cool because it was the same day that Miguel Huron, the head of story for Across the Spider-Verse, came to our school for a talk, and he looked at some of the pre-production for senior project storyboards, at least for the animated ones. He was also at the after party, and I got some storyboarding advice from him, which was really neat. It wasn't the only time we had a cool presentation like that. I took a game development class in my last semester where we were creating a 2D platformer game called Waiting at the Door, which was a story about a dog looking for her missing dead owner. I didn't come up with a concept for this one, as I already made my own game about someone going through grief back in high school, but I was the background artist, animator, and producer for the game, and at the end of the semester, we presented the demo to a bunch of other game developers, people who were anything from employees at game studios to people who actually were the CEOs of their respective companies. That was awesome too. Now, animators usually have a capstone film they do for their degree, because all art majors are basically jammed into one visual arts major at my university, so it was like separated by concentration, and there was one class we all had to take that was the senior projects class. It's very straightforward. You spend a whole semester taking everything you learned for your time at UMBC and you make a thing. It doesn't have to be related to your major, but has to be finished and presented in a gallery with everyone else's senior projects. I actually do plan on having a video coming out shortly after this one about my process with making my film, which is already up if you haven't seen it. I got the idea for We Ignore Designs almost 2 years before I actually got to take the class, so it was very easy for me to start the film when I had to. I have some stories regarding the making of this film, so I'm going to save them for when I make the development process for the video, but let's just say that I had to do the pre-production on my own time instead of taking the class for it with all the other work I had to do, but I made it work. And so I graduated in the spring of 2025. It's been a long time coming, with so many things changing between when I started college to when I finally finished it. So now we're in the question everyone who has been watching this film so far probably has been waiting for me to eventually answer. Is art school worth it? And I think the answer involves one other question. What do you want out of an art education? If you really want to make this a career and can stomach the cost of art school or get scholarships to finance it, then yes, I think it can be worth it. I only spent one semester at SCAD and met so many cool people and professors, got to go to portfolio reviews, get advice from my resume website, get advice from other creators, people who had graduated from school and were now working like in their own comics, and I got some valuable skills and knowledge that I still use to this day. But I don't want people who can't find the money to go to art school and want to make art their career to think that they have to go to art school to get a fulfilling art education. I graduated from a STEM school, but if I didn't go to UMBC, then I wouldn't have considered getting a cinematic arts minor. I wouldn't have discovered a love for film and film history I have now. Would I have felt fulfilled in other ways if I had stayed at SCAD only? Probably. But it doesn't mean I didn't discover something else valuable when I moved schools. I met wonderful people, got to stay closer in touch with my friends, and was able to enjoy my time in school. I also started learning how to speak French because we had a language requirement, so I can parler français. So if you're looking at art school but are apprehensive about the cost, see what affordable options are available near you first. You don't have to go to a big fancy art school to get a decent art education, and you certainly don't need to sell yourself into financial debt to get that knowledge. Although I certainly didn't completely escape it, but if you want to find other career options and don't want to make art your job, you don't be afraid to pursue other means of living. The world is yours. There are a ton of options out there. Find something, anything that just pays you to live. And that does it for the end of this video. I'll be listing characters' creators next to the art, but here are some attacks I've finally done. Remember, I am on Art Fight. Feel free to attack me if you dare. I'll attack you back. I'll get you. I'll come in for you. Slapping my fist in my hand. That's me preparing to attack you back. And if you like what I do, subscribe. I post story times like this, as well as other kinds of commentary videos and media analysis videos. I also animate, and I gotta use that college knowledge for something, and so that's what I'm doing, making funny animated videos on YouTube. I also work on a queer horror webcomic called In Harmony, which you can read on inharmony.the-comic.org. Chapter 3 is almost over, so feel free to catch up with the comic before it ends. But if you want even earlier updates for In Harmony, you can find early access pages on my Patreon. I also post behind the scenes sketches and art and a new thing where I'm currently brainstorming a new story I'll eventually be starting. Ooh, spooky. I hope you're ready for that. Thanks for watching, and I will talk to you all later. Bye!